Volleyball offense is a game of information. And so usually when I go talk to players, they usually think that being tall, being very athletic, having a high vertical, those are the kind of things that make a really good offensive player. But in reality, the things that really make you good at volleyball is having good technique, being very skillful, and making great decisions as an offensive player. And so, contrary to popular belief, being good at hitting lines isn't actually that good of an indicator for how good you are at the sport of volleyball. And so I kind of wanted to share a quote here, which is, "Man is only a reed, the weakest in nature, but he is a thinking reed." Just to kind of essentially explain that a human being is extremely fragile, but the reason that the man has dominated nature and became the apex predator is mainly because of the ability to think and reason. And we want to kind of bring that kind of philosophy into volleyball as well. And so the question I want to ask is, how do we make offensive decisions? What if you could always see the court from above? How would you then make your decisions? And what I mean by that is, imagine you're playing a game of volleyball and you're usually looking on the 2D kind of plane or like the horizontal plane, and you only see what's in front of you. But if you could see from above, the bird's eye view, if you could see that, how would you make your decisions? And so if we see this position, you're playing indoor, the outside has the set, and he's about to go ahead and swing. And so what we see in this position is there's actually a hole in the block, and we actually see that the setter is cheating up in this position, and we also see that the outside's cheating up. I wouldn't call the outside cheating because he just wants to cover the hole that's been made in the block. And so if I was playing this position normally, maybe I might not notice that the setter is actually moving up right here. However, if I could see the game from above, I might as well just try to hit like a high, deep line roll shot to the corner because I know it's open right now. And so the thought process I want to make is, how do we make better decisions and how can we try to reason and understand what the defense is doing? And so let's talk about volleyball, the information game. All our offensive attacks are based on the data we collect while playing. And so there's three ways you really gain that information, which is 1, looking before the swing, 2 is the peripheral vision at the point of contact, and 3 is understanding the game state. And so we're going to talk about looking before the swing. And this just means like when you're actively playing defense, or I'm mainly talking about from the context of beach volleyball, but when you're actively playing, you are looking at where the players are positioned. You're seeing where the block is, you're seeing where the defender is, just kind of having that in your kind of mind. It's kind of subconscious, but you kind of just understand like, okay, this is where they're playing. And then the other part of looking before the swing is actually taking a peek when you're approaching to swing at a ball during your penultimate step, which is the second last step in your 4-step approach to swinging a volleyball. You're actually taking that peek. It's like a quick like head nod down, and it's very strong because you can see where the defense is playing. You can see like where like the blocker is kind of like setting up. It just gives you good information. And so the best players I would say to see that kind of like taking the peek is, I would say, Duda Lisboa and Christian Sorum. These guys are both really good at doing this, and I would say they play an extreme game of just pure vision. They dominate the game by making great decisions. And so the second concept is peripheral vision at the point of contact. And what that means is the view from the side while you're in midair. So like you're midair right now and you're looking at the ball, but out of the side of your eye, you can see like where the defense is sometimes, and you can see where the block is positioned. And so when you're up here, the questions you should be asking is, how are the blockers positioned, like I mentioned? And what should I expect from the defense based on how the block is positioned? So for example, I see a guy while I'm jumping in the air, the blocker is hard in the line. And so I should expect that the defender is going to be in the angle because the blocker is in the line. So that's a very basic way of thinking about that. And obviously, the simplest use case for this information is to just hit around the block. And so the third concept is understanding the game state. And what that means is you need to understand the context of the game that you're in. And you want to know what the likely shots and swings are. And so we're going to explain this in a moment. But the big point is you always want to remember that the defense is always wrong. You simply just take what spot they left open and you hit it. I don't think you should be coming into an attack thinking like, I'm just going to hit a high line here, or I'm going to go ahead and hit this here because I think the defense is going to do that. The way I personally approach volleyball offense is I go up, I take these pieces of information. I think these are like the 3 shots I'm going to hit, and these are the most logical shots in the situation. And so now we're going to talk examples. And so we're going to go to volleyinstinct.com. And so let's talk about one example when it comes to game state. So for example, we can put a 2v2 situation. Let's actually do 2v2 left side attack. And so the blocker is right here. The defender is like standing in the middle. Let's actually take a ball. The ball is being set to the hitter, and the defender decides to play back. Right? They decide to peel on you because they don't think that you are going to get a strong swing right now. And so when they peel, this is a game state where they have peeled off the net. Whenever somebody peels off the net, I immediately I'm thinking about hitting deep middle because this is an extremely strong shot when they peel off the net. And so a game state like this, I know that deep middle is a strong shot. Another thing I could think about is maybe hitting the 2 very short corners because this guy just made a move back. I might try to hit the short corner that he was just in. So that's maybe something I'd think about. Other things to also think about is the players on the world tour and the best players, they know that like deep middle is an option that most people are going to say. And so usually the defender will actually probably step in into like the middle actually. And so like the blocker has peeled back and this defender will actually stay more in the middle rather than going out wider because they know that this guy is going to most likely swing to the middle. And so if you actually know that, a game within the game is sometimes you actually, instead of hitting deep middle, you actually go hit deep diagonal instead because you know this guy is shifting in. So these are kind of like thought processes that you kind of make. And what I wanted to like kind of really highlight is we are essentially building off the 3 concepts that we talked about earlier, which is looking before the swing, understanding the game state, and like the peripheral vision of the point of contact. And so here's like a concept that uses all 3 of those, which is let's actually just clear the board. And we're going to take a situation where it's a right side attack and I want the line block. And so we see this situation. They have the ball. I know this guy's in the, I'm jumping, or let's just say this. I am approaching for the ball. And while I'm approaching for the ball, I'm taking a look. In my look, I see that sorry, 1 second. I'm taking a look, and in my look, I see that this guy's already staying here and he's committed to the angle position. And then I jump. So this is the second component of the information. At the point of contact, in my peripheral vision, I see that the blocker is in the line. And I already knew that the information that this guy was over here. And so in that situation, what am I doing? I can decide to just hit the angle because this guy's in the line and I want to hit around the block. Another idea is I would hit the deep line because I want to hit above what the blocker is covering. Because if this guy already committed to the angle and this blocker is committing to line, that means if I hit over what the blocker is supposed to cover, I might be able to score. So that's an option I would be thinking about. And so this is kind of like the thought process and how you use the concepts of information to make your attacking decision. And so you can really dive super deep into this, but these are just like 2 quick examples on how you should think about making volleyball attacking decisions. I appreciate you guys watching if you guys stuck around this long. I just wanted to also mention that if you guys have any inquiries about the content or the website of volleyinstinct.com, shoot me an email at volleyinstinct@gmail.com. Appreciate you guys.